tervist, minu nimi on Aleksander Eeri Laupmaa ja vaatate Fotografiska jutusid. Minu tänane külaline eesti keelt taaskord ei ole selgeks õppinud, nii et ma vahetan kohe inglise keeleni, aga minu külaline täna on Ellen K. Willas. Ellen, welcome to Fotografiska.
Hello, thank you.
It's very nice that you're here. You are a curator, you are a gallerist, and you are working with many of the artists that we have at Fotografiska Tallinn, and I'm sure we'll get to a few of them, but I thought it would be good to start with somebody that we haven't had at Fotografiska Tallinn. But would you be willing to tell me how did you meet, and correct me if I'm pronouncing her name wrong, how did you meet Lene Maria Fossen? And who is she?
Wow, that was a surprising opening question. Lene Maria Fossen, I worked with her for some years. She was a very, very talented photographer, artist, and she devoted herself mainly to the self-portrait, and it was, she died actually before we could publish her book, and she was never able to see the exhibition herself because she was suffering from anorexia. Jesus, that was... but she felt, and her family felt, that it was an important work and it had to be shown. And we all know that there's so many people suffering from eating disorders all around the world. So I felt it was my obligation to fulfill her last wish.
How did you find her?
She found me. She came to my gallery. I used to have a gallery in Oslo, and she came with her to show her prints, and she wanted an exhibition. And
were you sold at first sight?
No. They were obviously very, very powerful works, but she wasn't quite ready yet. So we worked together 2.5, 3 years before she died, with giving feedback and making a strong portfolio of her work. Yeah.
But what is it for you that touches you about an artist or about a photograph?
We had a very nice discussion about this last night at Fotografiska. It always involves beauty in one way or another. It's like we were talking about it last night. You open the door with the beauty, and then you're ready to tell your story. But you need a door opener, and for me, it often is beauty. I really like works that have a sense of timelessness in them, where you can't say, oh, that's taken in the 90s, but it's more, the time is not so important. Those two things are the main qualities.
But with somebody like Lene Maria Fossen, what would you say like the main thing that it is that we see on her photographs? Is it because it is beautiful in a certain kind of way, but it's very morbid at the same time. It is very, absolutely. It's so close to the bone, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And so it's if you see something like that, it's it doesn't make you feel easy for certain. It's very, very powerful. It's very visceral. And is that what you're looking for, or is it sometimes something more subtle that perhaps works that you can look for a long time before you start even seeing something in them?
Absolutely, it's both. It depends. With Lene Maria, of course, self-portraits of a person who's suffering badly from anorexia, it's not going to be easy to look at, but still she was able to capture it with some sort of beauty by choosing. She had daylight always. It was a dreamlike setting. She was shooting in Chios in Greece. She found an old lepra hospital where she was working, and all this, the scenery made it dreamlike. But like Helene Schmitz, another artist that I'm working with, that also was at Fotografiska in Tallinn. She does these beautiful landscape photographs that are, at first eyesight, they are very, very beautiful, and then when you look closer, you see some traces of human interaction with the nature, and that has a nerve. It's like how do you say? Like it gives the work a sense of it's a bit uncomfortable.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's something. It's not just a beautiful landscape. It's something else. And similar with Lene Maria Fossen as well. It's something that is very, very beautifully done, but you see something that makes you feel uneasy, because obviously as humans we're very adapted to seeing disease. We're very adapted to seeing illness. If there is somebody has something wrong with them, we notice it immediately. And she said something very beautiful, Lene, that when she was a child she wanted to stop time, which is so strange.
Yeah.
It's so it's like it feels so deep. Like if somebody said, especially if it's somebody like her, when she says that, you're like, wow, this is. And then she stopped eating because she wanted to stay a child. And then as an adult she started taking photos, which is a way of actually stopping time.
Exactly.
And you have these amazing moments, and it's so strange. Like what I'm going to say now, it isn't even a question. I'm just like pondering that the photography is so different than painting, because painting is even though you can paint like a certain scene or a certain person in a certain time, there is still something dreamlike or not so
tangible.
Yeah, exactly. But with photographs, it's like, even if you make it very artsy, it's still something like that. And it's, and in essence, every photograph is like trying to stop time, right? Even if it's showing to something, something different. Is that something that is appealing in photographs to you? Because I don't know that photographs are your like main interest, right? You don't deal in paintings or anything like that.
Not so
Have
much.
you ever tried to like verbalize for yourself why it is? Why do you find them so appealing?
I think I've been working with photography since, how long is it? 20 years, yeah. And I think that the main reason why I'm so attracted to the medium as such is it has this directness, as you were. It speaks to everybody. It's very democratic. Everyone has a camera all the time, and it's. I think that's the main reason. You don't need a long text to understand. Sometimes it can help with a long text because there's things that you don't see immediately, but I like the directness and the honesty that I find in photography.
Yeah, and if it touches you, it touches you. You don't. It's like a very good taste. Like if you taste a meal that you really like, nobody has to explain it to you, because if you love it, then you just love it. But if somebody would explain, you might love it even more, because you would get the context and all the different ingredients and so on. Somebody else that we had here recently and that we have at Fotografiska at the moment is Arno Rafael Minkkinen. And when I saw his works and when I saw Lene Maria Fossen's works, I felt something very similar, which is that they both struggled with their appearances from a very early age. And when I look at their works, even though they're very, very different, they both have these slender and slim bodies that obviously they look very, on photographs it's a certain body type that is very appealing, is not the right word, but it works, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And I felt with both of them that in some way, and maybe subconsciously, maybe consciously, they were like trying to see themselves as just like a part of what is, part of nature, part of whatever. And but you can do it in so different ways. What do you think about that?
I'm not sure if I got the question in there. What do you think about?
No, it's the fact that the way that they both do photographs is photographing themselves in some scenery. And it almost feels like behind that is a wish to just see themselves as a part of nature, even though they were always like weird in some way, strange in some way, not fitting in some way. And then they're trying to fit themselves.
That's an interesting take on it. Yeah, at least with Arno, that is the case, and also with Lena Maria Fossen to a certain degree, because, as I told you, this lepra hospital, it's also a metaphor. You know, this was where they treated people who had lepra in the old days, and it's run down and it's almost falling apart. But she chose that as her backdrop because she saw anorexia as today's plague, or whatever you want to call it. And she also tries to fit in a way. It's also interesting because Arno, he wrote a text for Lena Maria. And we were discussing dreams earlier before we started. And he had a dream. In his text, he's writing about this dream that he's driving across the countryside, and he passes the morgue. And it's a beautiful story.
He wrote for Lena Maria?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
We made a book, yeah.
I did not know that.
Beautiful book, yeah.
So that's in the book, Lena Maria's book, you have a writing by Arno? Oh, that's very interesting. I did not know that.
Send you one.
That's very good to know. Wow. What do you remember as a child, like art that you were first touched by, or things that grabbed you? And does it have anything to do with what you're doing now, or is it completely different?
It's completely different. But I remember I grew up with, my parents were teachers. We traveled. They were very adventurous. So I lived in Zambia for a few years, and in France, and on the west coast of Norway, and traveling a lot. And we only had like cheap reproductions, but it was Picasso and the real artists, but reproductions. So I really didn't have any connection with art as I was young. That came much later. Yeah.
And somebody like Arno and Rafael, he has made same photos, basically the same idea, the same spirit for 50 years, more than 50 years now. And also you work with somebody like Vincent Peters, also such a beautiful, amazing human being who for more than 20 years has photographed in very similar way. Again, always trying to like find something again and again and again. And I remember there is this. Have you seen the documentary of Sebastião Salgado, Salt of the Earth? It's
of course.
Such a beautiful documentary, right? And in it he says that he remembers being 6 years old in his on his parents' property it's the Atlantic rainforest, just underneath the Amazon rainforest. And he remembers as a 6-year-old like seeing a certain kind of sunlight coming through tree branches. And he said that every photo he has ever taken, basically, he has tried to recreate that feeling, even though he's photographed so many different things, right? But there is always this like trying to find that some innocence or some beauty from far away, some nostalgia. And it's very similar. I feel like it's similar with Vincent Peters, and it's very similar with Arno, Rafael, Minkkinen. That they might not even know what it is, but sometimes, and with Vincent Peters, he says like, right, it's all the films he went to see with his dad and the connection that he has through that. But it's that. And then you have other artists like you have Brandt, who we have in the house right now as well, and it's so different because the early works, you look at them and you have this similar feeling that the portraits of the animals, it's just like trying to see this raw beauty and this just the majestic nature, and then he's been moving on and moving on and moving on more to like showing problems in the world. When you're working with an artist who is going through that journey, like what is it like for you? And do you always like cheer them on, or sometimes are you like, no, what are you doing?
Both. It's super fascinating. Like with Brandt, I've known him for many years and followed his work, and we did exhibitions in Oslo together. I recently finished an exhibition of his latest work in Oslo, The Day May Break. And when I was at Fotografiska yesterday, looking at his exhibition there, it's like this amazing narrative of his journey from these beautiful, beautiful animal portraits. And you can say that there's a lot of people photographing wild animals, and there's kind of an inflation in it. But in my opinion, there's no one who's ever done it like Brandt, because these are portraits. He's capturing the soul of these animals in a way that I haven't seen anyone else manage to do as good yet. So you have that as a starting point, and then it evolves because he's obviously registering what's going on. How many is it? Like 40% of the number of species has dropped since my lifetime. It's crazy to think about that. And then in the exhibition, back to that, you see there's one corner where you have the animal portraits and you have the petrified animals. And it's like, this is his journey. You go through and you inherit the dust, and you see these panels that he put up. I hope we can show some of them in later. There's one with it's called Underpass with Elephants, and the subtitle is Lean Back, Your Life is on Track.
So you were talking about Brandt's work, the Underpass with elephants, and it's a very, very touching photo. And at first, like, I went by it many times, and then I started thinking about the fact that it has a city in Africa, and it has, like, I don't know, 30 or 40 homeless people who are living underneath it. And then it has this small child, looking at the photo of the elephants, and next to it you have all the homeless people. And Nick said about it that he wanted to have like the past of Africa, the present of Africa, and then the future of Africa in the same photo. And it's very beautiful, it's very touching. But when I was looking at it again and again, I started also feeling like that even though we think of those people who are living in Africa, when we think about them, we think like, oh, these are the people who live in the same place where those wild animals live, right? But if you're second generation or third generation, somebody who's living in a city, then it's highly likely that you might never have seen an elephant in your life before. And then you have this massive print of elephants next to them. And I thought, wait a minute, this might be the first time in their lives that they've ever seen an elephant. And even though we think of them as the people who live together with them, we in our Western world might actually have been like having a lot more connections with those animals, seeing documentaries, seeing them in the zoo, feeding them, whatever. And for those people, it's like, what is this animal? I'm seeing it for the first time.
Yeah, it messes a bit with our preconceived thoughts. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's the beauty of Nick Brandt's work, I think. And I know this exact picture, it was bought by a Norwegian collector who placed it in a boardroom in his offices. And they told me that this actually affects the conversations in that room. So here they are sitting, making decisions on behalf of a large company, and they have that on the wall. And it makes them maybe think about things in a different way than they would if it wasn't there. And that's, I like that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you see from the side, or as somebody who is working with the artist, their journey take a very sharp turn? Or maybe, actually it hasn't been a sharp turn, because it has been like step by step, just slowly, gradually going from one place to another. When you see something like that from the side, how does that make you feel? Or and if you see it, do you sometimes feel like, ooh, don't go there?
Yes, and then it's hard to not be very blunt and do that. And I think that it's such an important part of the process of the artist to go into those small loopholes or do these projects that maybe don't succeed, but they in the end, like when I look at Nick Brandt's work now, the work we presented in Oslo, The Day May Break, maybe it would never have been as good, I would say perfect, but as good as it is without some of these other works on the it's part of the process, and it's a learning curve, and maybe it needs to be part of it.
Yes, I think it's very similar, like with musicians, and especially with very good musicians. They always have albums where people are like, why are you doing this? What is this strange sound? What are you trying? And it's like, if you just look at it as a single thing, it might just feel weird, but it's something like they have to get it out of their system, or they're like working through something, and then they get to something much more beautiful or much more wholesome. But exactly as you said, like you need that step in between to get to that other place.
It's like life.
Yeah. Many of the artists that you're working with, they work with again with some very heavy subjects, and like there is this very famous photo that most people have heard about, which is the photograph taken in Africa of a vulture that is approaching this starving child. And the photograph, he later took his life, right? And it's very often that if you're like working with, or if you just see a lot of suffering around you, it's very difficult for us, right? And it almost like the more heavy the work is, the more you need like a counterbalance or a counterweight that would like give your life some positivity. And with somebody like James Nachtwey, for example, he feels like he's obviously he's seen so much pain, so much horrible things. And that is more than most people could take, I think. But when I see him as a human being, he feels like somebody who's he's been able to process it in as healthy as way as possible. And how, like when you're working with artists like that, how do you balance that? How do you find that light when you're working with something that is so dark?
Let's use Nick Brandt as an example again, because since it's up at Fotografiska right now, people can go and see it. You will find there's hope in all of these images when you look closely, like the one we were discussing with Underpass with Elephants, where the two children represent, at least for me, hope. It's maybe a cliche, but still, it's the way that they interact with the animals that are just on a photo in front of them. It tells us that this is the way that the children are our future. And also with the latest work, it's the same. He portrays for the first time animals and humans in the same frame at the same time, and there are the children here who are confronting the viewer and taking charge. And now, while we're in the middle of these climate discussions, it's maybe this is the answer to solve the problems and to make a difference. Yeah.
When you're finding artists to work with, are you looking for them to have a message of some kind of another, or does it just have to touch you, and maybe it can be like touching in an abstract way, or in a way that we can't like put our finger on?
Yeah, it's both. I really I prefer to work with artists who have a mission, who want to inspire a more conscious world, as the slogan of Fotografiska. This makes me feel like I'm doing something that has a purpose, and that it's important. But like with for instance, with Arno's work, you could say this artist has been taking self-portraits in nature and urban landscapes for 50 years. Where's the message? But there is a message there about nature and taking care of the environment. And he's also a very, very socially conscious human being. So it's a more subtle message, but it's there, and that makes a lot of sense to me.
Tell me a story about the time when a photograph really inspired you, or when an artist's work actually made you change your actions or perceptions.
Do you want me to tell the story when I ended up eating porridge for 2 months after buying a photograph?
Yes, please.
This was Paris Photo. We go there every year, and this was, I'm not sure, maybe 2012 or something. And we went to a gallery, and they were showing Jeffrey Silverthorne, an American artist. You know him?
Perhaps.
Yeah,
I can't say.
He's not very well known here, at least not in Scandinavia. But and he did a series of work from the morgue in I think it was around Texas area in 1972. So he was allowed in, and he photographed people who were no longer alive. And there was especially one photograph of a woman who died in her sleep. And maybe I can send it to you so you can show it. But it's an image of a woman who has had an autopsy. So she's clearly dead. But her face and her pose are so graceful and beautiful. It's just so many things in that photograph. And for me, I have it in my office, and I look at it every day, and it's kind of a reminder of not to sleep through life. Yeah. So.
But why did it make you eat porridge for 2 months?
Because I got, he had an edition of 25. I think I got the number 24. So it was quite expensive, and I couldn't afford it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah.
And what was the name of the artist again?
Jeffrey Silverthorne.
Okay. Wow, I did not expect that.
And the funny thing was, when I went there not to buy a print, but I went there to buy his books because I heard of this guy. And then the gallerist, he asks us, would you like him to sign the books? And I was always, I didn't know that he was still alive. So I got all my books signed by this guy. He's a very interesting photographer.
Wow,
also.
because for a moment when you said that the lady, she had an autopsy, and she had died, and you had mentioned eating porridge before. I thought like that you would see like everything that she had eaten and she hadn't digested it or something like that, and that that went to a very, very different place. No, I'm grateful for that. You said before, you talked about the elephant, the underpass with the elephants that a company bought, and this is again something like when I was looking at Nick Brandt's works, and many of them have the intention of making you feel uneasy. And I thought, like with so many of them, nobody would like to have them like in their living room. But I thought, and it was a sick idea, but like that a very good purpose that they could serve would be to give them to children of very rich parents who are not grateful enough.
Yeah.
And to actually like put it next to their eating table or dining table, and every time again, like just like you said, like if you have something like that next to you that reminds you of things that are actually going on in the world, it's so much easier to just let some things go and like reorient yourself in a more meaningful way, because you have this reminder like, oh, there is actually things that matter a lot more. And for example, when we had the James Notway exhibition Memoria, I think it was late 2019 and early 2020. It feels ages ago, even though it's actually just last year, but it feels ages ago. But when we had that, and every time I would take somebody to see the exhibition and I would talk about it, I would cry almost every time. But after that, I would feel very much alive, and I would feel so much easy in all of my relationships, in everything else that is going on through the day, how I get my coffee, if somebody messes something up, somebody cuts me off, whatever it is, it doesn't, like nothing felt so important, because you go through that pain every single day of seeing those people who are hungry, who are dying, who are in war, and so on. And so I feel like in that way art is such, and especially photographs, because they're so much more visceral.
Direct,
again. Yeah, they have this ability to just look at it and you're like, oh, wait a minute, what am I doing? Why am I so angry at this random thing right now?
Yeah, put you into place, whack you into place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are so different ways that, again, art can manifest, and I feel like there is a very strong current, and there has been for many decades, for art to be very risky. It has to be very edgy, very new, or always have to push boundaries. And there is different type of art. Let's say what Vincent Peters does, or the early works of Nick Brandt, which is just like art can also be just seeing something that is very traditional, very natural, and just trying to like show the gist of it or show the essence of it. Do you see that art has to be a certain way, or art that is a certain kind has like more depth to it or more meaning to it, or is more important?
If there's nothing about a photo, if it's only beauty, then if you buy something, for instance, and put it on your wall at home, and after 2 weeks you stop interacting with it, because there's no challenge or no intellectual, no energy in it, then it has no interest for me. It could be wallpaper instead. Yeah, it has to be some sort of a challenge, or some sort of a dialogue between me and the piece, and that's
it is said
essential.
that if you have couples and they don't argue enough, then they will break up. And people think that they want to be in a relationship where they have no arguments, but actually, like they did some study years ago where they would like just record a couple having like the morning coffee or their breakfast, and they could predict like very, very accurately by how many disagreements they had, like how fast they would break up or how long their relationship would last. And it was something like if you had more than 12 small disagreements like over the course of an hour or something like that, then you would break up very, very fast, very easily.
Okay.
But if you would have like less than, I don't remember what the number was, but if you would have less than some number, then you would also do that. Because even, and there is like this sweet spot that you want to get along with the person, but you want them to be some sort of a challenge. You don't want to, like, because we all want to grow some way. We don't want to have some like excitement in our lives. And if it's just like, okay, I have no arguments with you, but you're just like a blank wall, even no matter how beautiful you are, then it's like it's too boring for us. And it's the same with art. Yeah. That brings me to the question: when you look at like something that Vincent Peters does, or the early works of Nick Brandt, which is beautiful, but there is something more. What is it that we see there? Why aren't those works boring for us?
Well, with Nick Brandt's work, there is early work, these beautiful portraits. It's something spiritual, maybe, that's going on, because you feel that this, for instance, let's take one of the lions, maybe. The lion that he waited 17 days in order for it to be digesting its meal and waking up so he could photograph it. It's so majestic and so present in that frame, and I think that's what does it. It's something intangible that you can't visual, you can't how do you say, you can't express it with words, but there's something there.
Do you feel there's many artists who try to imitate things like that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Oof. Sorry.
Do you meet many of them? Like, cause I have no idea about your line of work. Like, do you have many people? Because you mentioned Lene before. Like, do you have many people like turning up to your like gallery or a studio and trying to?
There's many emails every week with people who just send me an email with JPEGs and ask if I want to work with them.
How many of them do you open?
Not many. No, if I never met them before and this is their way of approaching me, no.
Do you see like mistakes or ways that young artists approach their art? That like there are common mistakes that they make, or things that again, ways they think like, oh, this is if I want to become an artist or a respected artist, this is what I have to do. Yeah. But you always see like this is going in the wrong direction.
Well, there's a lot of people who want to become artists, or who want to live of their art, and I think the first lesson or the first thing that they should think of is to treat their art with the same respect as they want us to treat it. So don't send digital files if you want us to work with your prints, for instance. I want to see the real deal. And you know, the first impression is so important. So.
Yeah, and if it's an email, then it's
At least give me a phone call first and ask for an appointment, and we can sit down and discuss it. Yeah.
Are there any artists, and you don't have to mention any names, obviously, that you've like seen something in, or that have been promising, and then a few years later you're like, oh, it was just like they just got lucky with something randomly, but it doesn't pan out in a productive way?
It happens, yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. And also, the intentions of the artists have to be so clean, because there's so many hidden, or how do you say, you can fall into different pits.
Yeah.
So if their intention is not pure, it can easily go off rail, and that happens. Yeah.
Do people come to you for advice whether it's like aspiring artists or the artists that you work with?
Yes, they do, and this is one of the most fulfilling parts of what I do is to be able to try to guide in some direction. Yeah, I enjoy that.
What is the advice that you most often give to somebody?
Go back, fail again, and fail
try.
better. No, sorry. No. I don't say that. But I ask them to go back and to fail again, but to fail better.
Do you think there is like a common advice that is often given that is false?
What kind of common advice?
I don't know. Because in most areas of life there is usually like people say something like whatever it is, like just work harder, don't think about it.
Yeah.
Or like doesn't matter what anybody else says, it only matters what you feel. It's the type of advice that it's correct if you're Van Gogh, but it's not correct for 99% of people, because the reason why we care about what others think is because others are the people who have to consume whatever it is that we create. And sometimes it does happen that there is somebody that nobody understands in their time and they turn up to be a genius. Brilliant. But oftentimes, like, there are also, for every Van Gogh, there's probably 10,000 people who do something that is just ugly and boring and uninteresting and whatever, and they think they're a genius, but actually they should listen to other people and just do something different.
Well, if there's something I would say, maybe keep your day job. Don't go for your career as an artist as of yet, and wait for more confirmation. But it's hard because there's so many. You have a person in front of you, and he has or she has. This is the dream, and it's a big thing for them.
Would you say that the people who are actually good, would you say that the way that they approach these things is that they come to you and they're like, I know, I am great, I'm supposed to be a big star, and if you just give me a chance, I'm going to be amazing? How many of the people who are actually good are like that? None, right? And then you have people who are like that, who oftentimes have no talent whatsoever. No,
the people I work with have that in common, that they are extremely humble and extremely hardworking. They get up early in the morning and they work all day. Many of them do not have children, for instance. They chose not to in order to fulfill their career. So they're sacrificing a lot in order to do this. Yeah.
How long have you been in this line of work?
I think it's 20 years.
20 years. How did you stumble upon it? Or did you stumble upon it, or was it something that grabbed you and you just went with it?
No, I used to be in finance, so I used to work as a stockbroker for many years.
Wow, that sounds like fun.
Stock exchange.
Let's talk the rest of the interview about that. It sounds great.
It was fun, but then life happened. I got married. I had 2 kids, 2 beautiful children, with only 18 months apart. And my husband was also in finance, so we decided that one of us had to step down. And I was traveling a lot with my work too, so I won. And then I wanted to do a workshop in photography, and that's where it started. Sorry. So after that, there was no looking back. I had a partner, and we made a darkroom. So we learned all the tricks of the trade with, printing silver gelatin prints and photographing.
But how did it happen? Like, how was it photography that you? Was it just? Did it just happen?
Yeah, we listened to. There's a Norwegian photographer called Morten Krogvold, And he's an incredibly inspiring lecturer. He does workshops. So you go to this place in the middle of nowhere in Norway, and you spend a week there with other people who are also want to learn photography. And he has, you should go, actually, it's fantastic. He has lessons in art history, you draw, there's music, there's film, and then you get a mission or task for the week. So you go out in this crazy little town called Vågå, and you photograph people you meet, and then you develop it in the darkroom, and you end the week with an exhibition. And I think for many people, not only me, but for many people who's been there, there's been over 10,000 people to this workshop. It's been a life changer, you know. You go out of there and you see the world in a different way. Yeah.
And that's very, very beautiful. And so this was like the beginning.
Yeah.
And for the past 20 years, has there been something that you've had to change your mind about, change your perceptions about within the world of photography?
Yeah, let's see. I think it's, you know, I met with the founders of Fotografiska, it's about 12 years ago now, before they opened Fotografiska, isn't that about 12 years? Yeah. And that's when I, you know, this whole idea of inspiring a more conscious world, the slogan that they always use, it's, after that, that was always my guideline. So after that, it hasn't been much regrets. Maybe some bad decisions, you know, with. I had a gallery in Oslo. I closed it down because we were moving to Sweden to do to work more closely with Fotografiska. Maybe I should have kept that gallery. Now I'm pondering about, should I open a new one in Stockholm? Probably I will, but it's like the world is changing very fast and we have to adapt all the time. And when you look at decisions you made back then with today's time glasses, it may look like a very stupid idea what you did back then, but you have to take into perspective who you were at the time and why you made the choice. You know?
That is a very good point. To flip it around, have you ever had a moment in your life or done something that felt like a failure or a misjudgment at that time, but now looking back to it, you're like, oh, this is exactly what had to happen? And
yeah, several of those.
Can you tell me a story about that?
Like, we worked closely with Roger Ballin, you know his work? Yeah. So we did a big exhibition at Fotografiska in Stockholm called Theatre of the Absurd. And Roger, he's a very, very interesting and a nice man to be working with, although his imagery seems at the first sight very dark and disturbing. And he insisted that we should, or he suggested that we made an installation in the exhibition. So he wanted a room decorated as kind of a bedroom or a one-room flat with a bed, with a kitchen table, with art on the walls and a person lying in the bed. And then we went to this flea market and he wanted us to, and he immediately, of course, he found a cat, stuffed cat. And he always has animals in his artwork. So he said, this cat's name is now Sweetie, because it was in Stockholm, and it's gonna come with me to the exhibition, and I'm gonna take her back to South Africa with me after the exhibition. And then we discovered there was a hidden zipper under the cat. And we open it, and inside the stomach of the cat, we find its tail.
Wow.
A hidden tail.
The real tail.
The real tail. The cat with a secret tail.
Wow.
And there were moments there when I was like, oh my God, should we really be doing, just another day at the office? You're at a flea market, you find this cat. It's a bit crazy, no?
And and you mentioned the future before, and this is like completely different topic, but are everything like where the art world is moving towards, like NFTs and everything that is happening online, is that something that you also pay attention to, and is it something that you feel like you also need to spend time thinking about?
It's something that I'm registering that's happening around me, and I need to understand it. I'm reading about it, and I'm trying to understand it. And it might have give some direction for what we do in the future, for sure, of course. But right now it seems very hyped to me, and I'm not part of that hype.
Yes, I was talking to Joram Roth in the beginning of the year, and he said that at least he feels like that art it's supposed to be seen by many people at the same time, and there is something about museums and galleries and whatever places where people come to look at that. It's something that we need. Like, we can't just like everybody has their screen and we can look at amazing photos, and that it's not the same thing. There is something communal about admiring things at the same time. What do you think about that?
I totally agree. I think, and also viewing things on a computer screen, for instance, as you mentioned, it's like going to museums, seeing the work as it's supposed to be seen on the wall, framed behind glass. There's nothing that can compare with that feeling when you encounter a work. Like on Instagram, come on, it's yeah.
Yeah, Nick brought up a very good point when he was here, and I had never thought about that before. And he said that everything looks good when it's backlit on a computer screen, and it's such a great point. And I had never thought about that before. That if you have anything that is backlit, it looks a lot better than it is when it's actually like on a wall somewhere. Yeah. And it's very hard to judge the quality of something if like all the conditions are right for it to shine. But actually, like if you would like take it out from there, it wouldn't have that. It wouldn't feel. It's almost like cheating you into thinking that something is good, whether even though it's actually not. We do have a few more minutes left, so I'm going to ask you a couple last questions. First of all, we touched upon that already before, which is one of the slogans of Fotografiska, which is inspiring a more conscious world. What for you inspires a more conscious world, like in your daily life or in general? And what would you say to other people? What is the best way to inspire or see a more conscious world?
For me, I always start my mornings with a walk or a run in nature, and that gives me energy throughout the day. It's an important routine, I guess. And I think the connection with nature is, I mean, I'm from Norway, so it makes sense. But that's an important part. And then I had a new resolution the other day, because I always do that, that I should every day do something that inspired me. So either if it's watching a good film, or going to a museum, going to a gallery, listening to music, or reading poetry or a good book, every day, just something, so that your mind can process something else than Excel sheets or. PDFs.
If you would go back 20 years when you started this journey, or not go back, but you could go back to yourself 20 years ago, what advice would you give to yourself?
Good question. What would you do? What would you
what
say?
What would I say to you? I have no idea.
No, to yourself.
To myself 20 years
Never
ago,
thought of
well,
that.
20 years ago, I was very, very young.
Yeah.
I would say
Grow
keep on being Johnny, grow up. Yeah, that's. No, I wouldn't. I would give myself no advice. Keep on doing what you're doing. You're a child.
I think when I look back now, I think all it's all about connections with people. That you build a relationship and it grows based on trust and a mutual. Like you're working together for the same goal, and I think there's nothing I would have. I think that was the right thing. Yeah.
You have children, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And is there something that you are trying or have tried to give them advice on that they're not willing to listen?
Yeah,
or you wish that they would?
They are children, or my children. Yeah, there's no. They're good. They are studying hard and living their lives, and I'm trying not to interfere too much, even though they might disagree with that. Yeah. No, I don't know what to say. If they have. Sorry, what was the question again? I'm getting tired.
No, that is okay. We're just finishing. So, if there is anything that you would like your children to take your advice on that they're not,
maybe get off the computer and into real life more.
Okay. If you think about that's the last question now about yourself, the same age that they are right now. What would you say to yourself?
If I was the same age as they are now, what would I say to them? I would say, don't pay so much attention to details that don't really matter. If it's 80% good, maybe that's good enough.
That's a very beautiful thing to end on. Ellen K. Willas, thank you very, very much for coming and talking to me.
Thank you.
Suur aitäh vaatamast ja järgmise korrani!